They say betrayal feels like a blade between the ribs, but they never talk about the part that comes before. The part where your body still trusts the hand holding the knife. That blind moment before the pain, where everything is still soft and warm and normal. That's the moment I want to talk about. Because that's the moment I lived in, until it all changed. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 36 years old. I've been married for 6 years to a woman I believed was my best friend, my partner, my future. Her name is Sabrina. Elegant, kind, quick with a smile that could calm storms. At least, that's how I saw her. My younger brother is Logan, charming, impulsive, always 3 steps ahead of disaster and somehow landing on his feet. He's 4 years younger than me, the kind of guy everyone loves at first sight. The kind of guy you make excuses for because he means well, even when he doesn't. I was always the opposite. The responsible one. The quiet one. The fixer. Maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to look. Sabrina and I met at a fundraiser gala 8 years ago. I was working logistics, she was there with her then boyfriend, someone who looked bored and rich. I remember the exact moment I saw her. She was standing near the wine bar, laughing softly at something I couldn't hear, wearing a navy dress that fell off one shoulder like it belonged that way. Our eyes met, just for a second. And something sparked. She found me later. Asked where the restroom was. It was an excuse. We both knew it. We talked for 3 hours straight, standing in a hallway with bad lighting and too much echo. She told me about her love for old books and morning coffee. I told her about my job managing logistics for a private security firm and my guilt over never calling my mom enough. 2 weeks later, she left the bored rich guy. 3 months after that, she moved in with me. And for a long time, it was good. Better than good. She challenged me. She made me laugh. She taught me how to slow down, how to enjoy a Sunday instead of just preparing for Monday. I thought she was home. I didn't realize she was passing through. The first time I introduced Sabrina to Logan, it was at my parents' lake house. We were hosting a 4th of July weekend with the usual suspects, my folks, my cousin Tara, her husband, a few friends from college. Logan flew in from Miami last minute, said he'd gotten time off from whatever project he was working on back then. He never stayed in one job longer than a year. When he walked in, Sabrina was sitting on the back porch, legs folded beneath her, sipping lemonade and reading a book. Logan paused. Smiled. Then said, "Wow, Ethan. You really upgraded." I laughed. Sabrina laughed. Logan winked. And I didn't think about it again. But maybe I should have. Over the years, Sabrina and Logan developed what I thought was a typical in-law rapport. They texted occasionally, joked at family events, bonded over music and bad reality shows. Logan always had a way of pulling people into his orbit. Sabrina wasn't immune. But I never saw anything that felt wrong. Not then. Sometimes, I'd walk into the room and find them laughing. I'd ask what was funny, and they'd say, "Inside joke." I'd shrug. Smile. Trust. Because why wouldn't I? Logan was my brother. Sabrina was my wife. What world existed where those two people would lie to me? Looking back, I can trace the beginning of the unraveling to a single moment, a small thing, barely a crack. 3 months ago. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I always worked late Wednesdays. I came home around 9:30 p.m., exhausted, craving leftovers and silence. When I opened the door, I heard voices. Laughter. The clinking of wine glasses. Sabrina and Logan were sitting on the couch. Just them. Dim lighting. 2 glasses. An open bottle on the coffee table. Sabrina looked up, startled. Logan gave a casual wave. "Hey, you're back early," Sabrina said quickly. "Didn't feel like working late." They exchanged a glance. Not guilty. Just too fast. Like they'd planned what to say before I walked in. I told myself I was being paranoid. That Logan was in town for a few days and Sabrina was just being hospitable. But something about the way she smoothed her skirt down, the way she didn't meet my eyes, that stayed with me. Later that night, I reached for her in bed. She turned away. Said she was tired. She rarely turned away before. Then came the hotel. And everything that followed. But I'll get there. First, I want to tell you about the buildup. The moments that stacked like bricks against my back until I couldn't carry the weight anymore. It was the missed calls. The subtle scent of a different cologne on her scarf, Logan's brand, I realized, months too late. The way she started locking her phone. Whispering during calls. The way Logan stopped returning mine altogether. Excuses built on excuses. I'd ask Sabrina how her day was. She'd say, "Fine," and walk away. I'd mention Logan coming to town and she'd say, "Oh, is he?" With a tone that was too casual. Too knowing. And one day, it clicked. That horrible, sinking feeling. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I became the person I swore I'd never be. A man checking GPS apps. Watching receipts. Noticing the way she dressed when she said she was just meeting a friend. I hated myself for it. But I had to know. It happened on a Friday. She said she had a meeting with a client downtown. A new referral. But she dressed like she was going to dinner. Full makeup. New earrings. Heels I hadn't seen her wear in years. I kissed her cheek before she left. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. I watched her drive away. 10 minutes later, I followed. Her car pulled into the back parking lot of a boutique hotel on the edge of the city, expensive, discreet, known for its privacy. I parked across the street and waited. Logan's car showed up 7 minutes later. He didn't even hesitate. Just pulled in, got out, and walked inside. No phone call. No text. No surprise. Like he'd been there before. I followed. The desk clerk barely glanced at me. I watched the elevator numbers light up. 7. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I took the stairs. Every flight felt like a betrayal unspooling in slow motion. I reached the 7th floor. Walked the hallway. Room 712. The door was closed. But I could hear voices. Laughter. And then, quiet. I stood there for almost a full minute, hand raised, breath shaking. Then I knocked. No answer. So I knocked again. This time, I said her name. Sabrina. Silence. Then a voice. Hers. From inside. Just a minute. The door opened. She was wearing a robe. His robe. And behind her, Logan, shirtless, smirking like this was the punchline to a joke I hadn't been let in on. They didn't scramble. They didn't explain. They didn't look ashamed. Sabrina met my eyes. Logan said, "Ethan. Didn't expect you." I stared at them. The two people I trusted most. And in that moment, I didn't feel rage. I felt nothing. Because when the knife finally slips between your ribs, the pain doesn't come right away. First, there's just silence. I didn't remember driving home. The streets blurred. The hotel vanished behind me. I only came back into my body when I found myself parked in our driveway, engine still running, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. It was 10:41 p.m. The porch light was on, but the house was dark. Sabrina wasn't home. And neither was Logan. I sat in the car for a long time. No music. No movement. Just breathing. Inhale. Exhale. And over in my head, the image of Logan's smirk. Sabrina's eyes, blank. Like I had caught them in the middle of folding laundry, not breaking a marriage. There was no guilt in their expressions. That was what shattered me. Not the affair. Not even the lie. But the way they looked at me, like I was the one interrupting their moment. I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room couch, still in my coat, replaying everything. The Wednesday night wine. The locked phone. The way Logan hadn't shown up to Mom's birthday dinner, despite promising her. The time Sabrina said she was staying late or just meeting an old friend. It was all there. Every breadcrumb I hadn't followed. Every sign I'd ignored because trust is a muscle you don't realize is strained until it snaps. At 6:14 a.m., I finally moved. I made coffee. I didn't drink it. I just needed something warm to hold. She came home at 7:53 a.m. Walked in like nothing happened. She smelled like the hotel. Her makeup was worn. Her hair was tied lazily at the nape of her neck, and she carried her shoes in her hand. When she saw me, she froze. Then gave a tired smile. "I didn't expect you to be up." I said nothing. She set her shoes down by the door. Like this was any other morning. Like my world hadn't collapsed 10 hours earlier. Then she walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. That was when I finally spoke. "How long?" She stopped mid-sip. Slowly turned around. Her expression didn't change. "Ethan." "How long?" I repeated, louder this time. "A beat." "Then, a few months." I stood. "A few months?" She didn't deny it. "Yes." "With my brother?" Another pause. Another breath. "Yes." I felt dizzy. And then she added the one sentence I never expected. "I didn't plan it, Ethan." But with him, I felt alive again. Alive. Alive. Like I had suffocated her. Like I had failed her so completely that falling into bed with my brother was oxygen. "Do you love him?" I asked. She didn't answer. And that, again, was my answer. I walked out. I went to my parents' house. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to see someone who loved me and didn't look at me like an obstacle. Mom opened the door and immediately knew something was wrong. "Ethan?" I broke. Right there, on the doorstep of my childhood home. I couldn't even say it. She held me like I was 7 years old again and had skinned my knees. Dad came out from the kitchen. He looked confused. "What happened?" I finally said it. "He cheated on me." Dad blinked. "Who?" "My brother." "With Sabrina." There was silence. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Dad?" He didn't flinch. Instead, he closed his eyes. And said, "Of course he did." That stopped me. "What?" He sat down. "I'm not surprised," he said flatly. "Logan has always been like this." My mother glared at him. "Don't say that." "It's true," he replied. "He stole from me in high school. Lied about it. Slept with one of your college friends, remember?" "That was different," Mom whispered. "Was it?" Dad said. "No consequences. Ever. We let him charm his way out of everything." He turned to me. "I'm sorry, son. I should have warned you." I sat there, stunned. They had known. Not about Sabrina, but about Logan. And they'd said nothing. Because that's what you do with people like Logan. You let them burn bridges and pretend it's light. I didn't go back to the house. I checked into a hotel near work. Cheap. Bland. No memories. I turned off my phone for 2 days. When I turned it back on, I had 28 missed calls from Sabrina. 4 from Logan. One text from Logan stood out. "Let's talk like adults. It's not what you think." I didn't reply. What was there to say? You don't talk your way out of betrayal. You don't explain your way out of incestuous selfishness. I forwarded the text to myself, saved the voicemail I found later. Because I knew I might need evidence, not to prosecute. But to remind myself this really happened. That I wasn't going crazy. In the weeks that followed, everything fractured. Friends started choosing sides. Some messaged me in quiet horror. Others avoided me entirely. One friend, a mutual one, said, "Well, I guess there was always chemistry between them." I blocked him. Work became a blur. I told HR I needed a week off. Said it was personal. They didn't ask questions. I started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Klein, was kind. Soft-spoken. She didn't press, just asked. "When did you stop listening to your instincts?" That question hit me harder than the betrayal. Because I had stopped listening. I had noticed things. And I had smothered the voice inside that told me, something isn't right. Because trusting Sabrina, and Logan, was easier than confronting the truth. One night, I found myself back at the lake house. Alone. The place where I introduced them. The place where Logan made his first stupid joke about upgrading. I stood on the back porch. Looked at the water. And whispered, "You're not going to break me." I didn't know if I meant Sabrina. Or Logan. Or the part of myself that still wanted to pretend it hadn't happened. But it felt good to say. It felt real. Then the final nail came. A voicemail. From Logan. No apology. No regret. Just. "You always lived in the safe zone, Ethan. She needed more. And you weren't enough. That's not on me. That's on you." I played it 3 times. Then deleted it. Because that was all I needed to hear. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the one who betrayed anyone. I was just the collateral. And now? Now I had to decide. Do I burn the bridge so fully that there's no return? Or do I walk away, head high, and let their shame rot without my fire? I haven't decided yet. But I'm close. Very close. You think that once the worst has happened, it's over. You imagine that once you've seen your wife wrapped in your brother's arms, in a hotel room they've clearly shared before, the pain will peak and descend. But that's not how it works. Because after betrayal, what follows isn't silence. It's decay. You wake up, and the house still smells like her perfume. You go to the store and pass his favorite energy drink and feel sick. You open your phone to delete their contacts, and your thumb hesitates, because your brother's number is the first one you memorized as a kid. Because your wife's photo is still in your favorites. You don't stop bleeding just because the blade is gone. Sometimes, you bleed more. After Logan's voicemail, I sat alone on the edge of my hotel bed for over an hour. Not moving. Not breathing deeply. Just, existing. Somewhere between fury and numbness. You weren't enough. That's what he said. That's what they both meant, in their own way. And for the first time since that night, I didn't cry. I laughed. A sharp, cold sound that didn't even sound like me. Because if I wasn't enough for either of them, then what had I spent the last 6 years doing? Who had I been trying to become, for her, for them? Who was I before all of this? And more importantly, who was I now? I went back to the house the next day. Not to make peace. Not to beg. But to take what was mine. She was there. Sabrina. She looked surprised when I walked in through the front door with a pair of moving boxes in my hands. She stood in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a mug like she'd lived there forever. Like she hadn't torched it weeks ago. "You're back," she said. "I'm not." She set the mug down. "You look different," she said. "I am. I didn't expect." "You didn't expect me to still be standing," I said. "But I am." She stepped forward. "I want to talk." "I don't," I said. Then I walked past her. Packed the books she'd never read but liked the look of on the shelves. Took the wedding album. Left the framed photo of the three of us at the lake. She followed me room to room, quiet, until I got to the bedroom. "There," she said, "you should hear my side." "No," I said. "Because I know your side. You made it very clear. I didn't mean to fall for him. I didn't mean to lose my wife and my brother in one night either. But here we are." And then she said it. The thing that broke whatever was left between us. I don't regret it. I paused. She waited for a reaction. I gave her none. "Good," I said. "Because neither do I." And I walked out. I stayed with a college friend for a few weeks after that. Alex. He had a spare room and the kind of quiet presence that didn't ask too many questions. We played chess. Cooked garbage meals. Talked about nothing. It helped. It gave me enough space to think. To decide. Because now that the collapse was done, what came next? Some days, I wanted revenge. Other days, I wanted nothing to do with any of it ever again. But then there were nights I'd wake up at 3 a.m. sweating, dreaming I was back in that hallway of the hotel, hearing their voices through the door, knocking, 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 waiting to be let into a truth I never wanted to know. I needed something more. Something beyond silence. Something beyond survival. So I started writing. Not to publish. Not even to share. Just to purge. I opened a blank document and wrote the whole thing. From the first time I introduced them, to the wine night on the couch, to the hotel, to the voicemail. Every word. No edits. By the end of it, I had over 40 pages. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Writing it made it real. And being real made it bearable. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Logan. Again. "Can we talk like men?" I replied, "We did. You chose your version." He didn't reply. Then Sabrina emailed me. Not a call. Not a text. An email. Subject line, closure. I didn't open it. Because I finally realized, they weren't looking for forgiveness. They were looking for release. From guilt. From accountability. They wanted me to be the bridge between who they were and who they pretended to be. I wasn't going to be that. Not anymore. I filed for divorce the next morning. Simple. Clean. Irreversible. My lawyer was quiet and professional. He asked, "Do you want to list infidelity?" I said yes. "Do you want to pursue damages?" "No," I said. "Let her keep the house. Let him keep whatever's left of his pride." He nodded. "Do you want to send a formal cease contact notice?" I smiled. "No. I want them to keep watching me rebuild." And that's what I started doing. I moved into a loft with big windows and ugly walls. I bought furniture that didn't match. I took a weekend trip alone. I got a dog. A rescue. Named him Knox. He doesn't listen worth a damn, but he sleeps by the door every night. I started therapy. This time, not just for grief, but for rebuilding. For understanding why I ignored the signs. Why I kept giving grace to people who weaponized it. One afternoon, I sat across from my therapist as she asked, "What would justice look like for you?" And I said, "To live a life that doesn't need them in it." She nodded. "That's not revenge," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's freedom." And freedom was better. Cleaner. Longer lasting. I haven't spoken to Logan since. I haven't responded to Sabrina's emails. My parents, they've stopped asking. Because I asked them once. Would you have forgiven him if? I thought the worst was behind me. And for a little while, it was. 3 months after filing for divorce, my life had taken on a new rhythm, slow, quiet, and strangely comforting. I spent my mornings running with Knox through the fog-heavy trails near my apartment, my afternoons buried in client work, and my nights reading, writing, and cooking meals for one without apology. There was no longer an echo in the silence. Just peace. It wasn't the life I had planned. But it was mine. Then Logan showed up again. It was a Wednesday. I was at a coffee shop, one I'd never visited before, tucked between a bookstore and a flower stall that always smelled like wet roses. I'd chosen it because I was trying something new, picking places at random, breaking old patterns, filling my life with unfamiliar details so nothing reminded me of them. I was reading. Or trying to. The bell above the door jingled. And there he was. Logan. Wearing a navy coat, same smirk, same casually confident walk. It felt like the air dropped 10 degrees. I didn't move. He spotted me instantly. Walked over like we just bumped into each other at a family picnic. "Ethan," he said, hands in his pockets. "You look good." I closed my book. "You have 5 seconds. Not to explain," he said quickly. "Just to say something I should have said months ago." I stared at him. "I don't want your apology." "I know," he said. "But I need to give it anyway." He slid into the seat across from me before I could stop him. And for a moment, we just sat there. 2 brothers. Once best friends. Now strangers connected by something vile. "I've been in therapy," he said. "I know that means nothing to you, and I get it. But I've been unpacking a lot. About myself. About what I did. About how easy it was to destroy something that wasn't mine." I stayed silent. "I wanted what you had," he admitted. "Not Sabrina. Not really. I wanted the life you had. The one where people saw you as stable. Respected. The good son. The one mom and dad never worried about. Then why burn it down?" I asked, voice cold. "Because I couldn't stand living in your shadow anymore," he said. "Because I'm broken. Because I thought if I could take something from you, maybe I'd finally feel worthy." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't take Sabrina from me," I said. "She chose to leave. And she chose you." He swallowed hard. "I know. Then why are you here?" His voice cracked. "Because it didn't work." My chest tightened. "I lost her too," he said. "We tried to make it something. To prove it wasn't just betrayal. But it was. It was. We killed something sacred, and all that was left was rot." "She's gone?" I asked. He nodded. "She left last month. Moved to Chicago. Said she needed a clean slate." I leaned back. "So now you want forgiveness?" "No," he said. "I don't deserve that. I want you to know that I see it now. What I did. What I destroyed. The silence between us stretched. I didn't offer him comfort. He didn't ask for it. I'll leave, he said, standing. I won't bother you again. He hesitated, then added, but you were always the better man, Ethan. Even when I hated you for it. Then he walked out. And for the first time since that night in the hotel hallway, I didn't feel like a man broken. I felt like a man who had been wronged. But not ruined. That night, I walked to the lake. The same lake where I first introduced them. It was quiet. Still. The water black and glassy. I skipped a rock, watched the ripples move outward. And whispered, let it go. Because carrying hate was a burden I was finally ready to set down. Not for him. Not for her. But for me. A week later, I got a call from my mother. She wanted to meet. I almost didn't go. But something told me I needed to hear what she had to say. We sat in her garden, surrounded by jasmine vines and wind chimes. She poured tea like it was still the past. Like we hadn't fractured. Then she said, I failed you. I looked at her. I let Logan get away with everything because I thought he couldn't survive the world the way you could. You were always strong. Responsible. I leaned on that too much. You made excuses for him. I did, she whispered. And you paid the price. She reached across the table and took my hand. I can't undo what happened. But I see you now. Not just the son who did everything right. I see the man who lived through something unimaginable and didn't let it kill him. I nodded. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Because I'd already cried enough. I started writing again. Publicly this time. Not about the betrayal. About healing. About rebuilding identity after trust is broken. About men and vulnerability. About what it means to survive people who were supposed to protect you. One of my posts went viral. An editor reached out. Asked if I'd ever considered writing a book. I said yes. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. Then came the email. From Sabrina. Subject line, no more excuses. I opened it. It was short. Ethan. I know there's no making this right. I know I chose destruction. But for what it's worth, I did love you. I just didn't love myself enough to be worthy of you. I hope you build something beautiful. S. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her. But because I had nothing left to say. Sometimes silence is the only closure you get. And sometimes, it's the most honest one you can give. 1 year later, I stood on a stage at a local conference, reading the first chapter of my manuscript. The room was quiet. Listening. And when I finished, someone asked. What kept you going? I looked out at the crowd. Smiled. And said, the belief that my story wasn't over. That what they did to me wasn't the end, it was the beginning of who I finally became. It took a long time for the rage to fade. Not because I held on to it, but because rage has a habit of hiding behind other things. You think you've moved on, but then someone walks past wearing her perfume, or you hear a song he used to hum, and suddenly you're right back there again, standing in a hotel hallway, feeling like the whole world conspired to humiliate you. But eventually, something changed. Not all at once. It was gradual. Like muscle memory retrained. I stopped reacting to their shadows. And I started responding to my own voice. The book came out in the fall. It wasn't about betrayal, at least, not directly. It was about boundaries. About surviving the collapse of your most trusted relationships and choosing to keep going anyway. I called it After the Door Opened. It sold better than I expected. Messages poured in. From men. From women. From people who had been betrayed, not just by lovers, but by siblings, parents, friends. People who said, "You said what I couldn't." And with each message, I healed a little more. Because I wasn't just surviving. I was helping others survive too. I got asked to speak at conferences. Small at first, then bigger. I stood on stages and talked about things men are taught not to talk about. Grief. Humiliation. The ache of not being enough, for someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally. And always, the same question came at the end. Have you forgiven them? And my answer never changed. No. But I've released them. Forgiveness, for me, would have meant letting them back into my head. Release meant I didn't care where they were anymore. Sabrina, last I heard, was still in Chicago. She worked for a tech firm, started hiking, dated someone new. I didn't know more, because I didn't want to. Logan disappeared again. That was his pattern. Burn, vanish, repeat. I hope he's in therapy. I hope he finally looked in the mirror long enough to see past the charm. But I'll never know. And I'm okay with that. Then, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Not through an app. Not at a conference. At the dog park. Her name was Maya. She had a big mutt named Rudy who knocked over Knox's water bowl like it was his job. She laughed, apologized, and offered to buy me a coffee in the park cafe. We talked for an hour. Then another hour, the next weekend. And then. I didn't want it to end. There was no grand romance. No whirlwind. Just quiet. Kindness. Steady ground. She asked about the book. I told her the real story behind it. She didn't flinch. Didn't try to fix it. She just said, "You must have carried a lot of pain. But the way you speak now, it's clear you didn't let it turn you bitter." That stayed with me. We started seeing each other every week. Then more. She never pushed. Never asked for more than I could give. And one day, months later, we sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker, and she said, "Do you ever think you'll get married again?" I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, "I don't know. But if I do, it'll be because I trust someone with the deepest parts of me. Not because I'm trying to repair something that someone else broke." She smiled. Fair enough. My parents eventually stopped asking about Logan. I think it hurt them more than they let on. But even they had learned the hard way, some ties, once severed, don't deserve to be knotted again. My mom apologized. Not in words. But in actions. She showed up to my book launch. She hugged Maya like she belonged. She stopped defending Logan in conversations. Sometimes, that's all we can ask of our parents, to do better once they know better. On the 1-year anniversary of my divorce finalizing, I visited the lake house. Alone. I stood at the same back porch where I once introduced Sabrina and Logan. And I closed my eyes. Took a deep breath. Then said aloud, "I'm not angry anymore." And it was true. Because what they took from me was never mine to keep. My peace? That's mine now. All of it. These days, people ask what I would say to someone going through what I went through. And I tell them. The people who betray you will always find ways to justify it. But you never have to agree with their version. You get to write your own. And if you do it right, you'll realize that healing isn't about forgiving them. It's about choosing yourself. And that's what I did. I chose myself. Not out of pride. Not out of spite. But because I finally understood. They didn't ruin me. They revealed me. And I liked the man they helped me become.